Jovan, Buha! Buha!
Yo, I'm Jovan Buha, Lakers beat writer for The Athletic, and welcome to another Lakers postgame reaction show. Just got back from Crypto.com Arena, where Luka Doncic posted his first triple-double as a Laker in an emotional reunion game against his former team, the Dallas Mavericks, as the Lakers won 107-99 to improve to 35-21. They have won 15 of their past 19 games, and they are back to being the number 4 seed. We have a lot to talk about on tonight's show, but before we get started, you guys know the drill. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. For those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. Shout out to the late night gang in the chat. I am using an Ethernet. I have evolved into 2025, and I plugged into my Ethernet here at home. Going to start traveling with it and hopefully have some better connections here. But what up, everybody? Appreciate all of you. So let's get into the overarching takeaway for the Lakers tonight. Is the Lakers keep rolling, and I am going to touch on Luka and the backdrop of the evening and all the emotions and all the things that went into tonight's game and tonight's performance. But I think big picture, the Lakers have won 15 of 19. They continue to make a push for home court advantage in the Western Conference. And no, this was not the prettiest win for the Lakers. It's pretty ugly at times. A 107-99 game in 2025 is often going to be a relatively ugly game by today's standards. And the Lakers were there hovering around like high 30s, low 40s in terms of field goal percentage. They really struggled from beyond the arc, shot just 27.5% on their threes. Dallas hit 17 threes. They hit 6 more than LA, so that kept them in it. They're also able to attack LA off of the dribble a lot and target some of their weaker defenders and just target them in isolation, similar to that January 7th win for the Mavericks. But ultimately, the Lakers prevailed. They outscored Dallas 11-5 over the final 315. Some big plays from LeBron James, from Dorian Finney-Smith, and that big layup to break the tie from Luka on the Gortat screen from Finney-Smith. So I think before I get into the Luka stuff and again, the backdrop with the Lakers and the Mavericks, like I just think the Lakers are playing at such a high level where they are problem solving on the fly, and they could have a game like tonight where it's not the best offensive performance, particularly in that, that they had a really rough third quarter, only scored 19 points, and yet they were 28 or more in the other 3 quarters, and they didn't let that derail. Like, how many times have we seen, and I've said this before, how many times have we seen the Lakers lose an emotional game like this? Like, anytime there's like a jersey retirement or a LeBron milestone or like some type of emotional game where there's a lot riding on the night, like outside of like the playoffs, those types of games the Lakers have tended to lose more often than not over the last few years. And tonight was a perfect example of, even with some things not going their way, even with them having no answer for Kyrie Irving off of the dribble, they still found a way to get this win. LeBron had 16 in the fourth, and they out-executed Dallas when it mattered most. So it's going to show up in the standings the same way. LA is now 14 games above 500, and again, it just continues to play at a high level and win in different styles. And I think that's been one of the keys to this. Is it doesn't really matter. Like, they can match their opponent, and whatever way their opponent wants to fight them, to kind of make a boxing analogy, like they can fight them in that way. And tonight it was going small, Les Jackson closing with that small group of LeBron, Rui, DFS, Austin, and Luka. And I thought they looked great together. Like, I'm going to be touching on that with one of my takeaways. Stat of the night to me, I'm going to go with 12 assists for Luka. So Luka gets his first triple-double as a Laker on tonight of all nights, and he posts a Laker high in terms of assists. So he had yet to crack double digits in assists. Again, only been 4 games, so not a big sample size. But I thought tonight we saw like the Lakers are continuing to trend in the direction of Luka being the primary ball handler, the floor general, the quarterback, but whatever term you want to use. And I thought tonight, like he could have easily had, if his group was shooting better, Luka could have had like 17, 18 assists. Like he was generating some really good looks for his teammates, and they were just missing. So I thought the 12 assists, including multiple late, because the way he got his 10th assist and the triple-double was that one back and forth with him and LeBron, where LeBron is on the wing, Luka's posting up max, and they keep picking the ball back to one another until the shot clock finally is dwindling. I forgot who was guarding LeBron, but he cheats over LeBron. Luka kicks it out to LeBron. LeBron nails the 3. Luka gets his 10th assist, and then he gets a couple more over the final few minutes there. So I thought that was a huge play. And Luka, again, I think is really like the scoring will come, and I think he'll have more nights like the Denver game moving forward. But even when it's not there, he's rebounding. He led the group in rebounds. He was the only player to get double-digit rebounds. LeBron had 12 as well. But outside of those two, like you have your 2 best players, your 2 perimeter guys, right? And LeBron's kind of playing a hybrid role right now. Sometimes he's at center, sometimes he's a small forward. Like he's fluctuating in the front court. Like those 2 guys were the only 2 guys to get double figure rebounds. I was actually accidentally looking at the defensive rebounding numbers, and but still, Luka led the group in rebounding. He led the group in assists, and he was right there with 19 points. So I'm going to give Luka the nod with the 12 assists, his Laker high, and the first time he reached a triple-double. Takeaway number 1 for me is going to be Luka's emotional evening. So as we found out after the game, Luka did not sleep much last night, and in anticipation of this game, there was a lot of nerves, a lot of anticipation, a lot of emotions. And he said post-game that basically today was a blur. Like the day was a blur, the game was a blur, everything. There was just a bunch of, he called it a different game, a weird game. He said there was a lot of components that went into tonight in everything. So you have the Jordan brand ad that drops this afternoon, early in the afternoon, where it's, I'm going to mispronounce the car name, so I'm not even going to try, but it's a fancy car, I think it's a Swedish car, and it's purple and gold, Laker colored, obviously. And they change out the license plate from a Texas white and blue 77 to a purple and gold, California license plate. And that's signaling that they're playing All My Exes Live in Texas. Brilliant ad. Just a great idea, great execution there. Then pregame, that car shows up at LA Live and is parked outside of the arena, and fans can take photos with it and videos. And there's like a free parking sign. So that was like Jordan's, the Jordan brand's way of welcoming Luka in that moment, and just sort of like the official arrival of Luka is him closing this chapter, playing the Mavericks. Then we have the actual game, and I happen to be walking through the Lakers tunnel right at the right moment where all of a sudden Luka comes out. So I follow him out through the tunnel, and I'm getting his POV of what it's like to come out, and there's all these fans waiting for him. They got Lakers jerseys, Slovenia jerseys, and they just serenade him with a bunch of applause and cheers, as to be expected. But it was this warm welcome. Then he goes out and starts going through his warm-up, and when Luka's going through his warm-up because the music changes. It goes from typically rap and hip-hop and pop to Serbian music. And he likes to warm up with Serbian music. He warmed up in Dallas with Serbian music. And for those who are wondering, like, his dad is Serbian. He grew up listening to Serbian music, and that's the reason why he does that. So they start playing Serbian music, and he's going through his warm up, and then all of a sudden you see Nico Harrison is right there at the scorer's table watching Luka warm up, and it's quite the sight. Then you look on the other side, and Anthony Davis is warming up. He obviously didn't play, but he's taking set shots around the floor. And it was just like this jarring image of the principal figures outside of Rob Pelinka, who later emerged from the locker room and sat on the Lakers bench, as he tends to do pregame. But you got Nico, you got AD, you got Luka, and they're all on their respective sides. And it just was interesting to see, like obviously Luka's played multiple games for the Lakers. AD played a game for the Mavericks and has been around the group. And like Nico is of course been with the Mavericks for several years, but like just seeing that there's something about that imagery of all of those figures together for the first time post trade. It just really, like, it's sinking in that this is the new normal. Then they do their pregame introductions. They give Max a thank you. They show a photo of Max in a Lakers jersey, give him his flowers for a few seconds. Then first time out, they play the thank you tribute video to AD, and basically everyone on the Lakers side like stops what they're doing and is watching the video, including LeBron. And the whole crowd is on their feet, and they give AD a standing ovation. And AD, you could tell, was really soaking it in. And like, he didn't get that warm welcome from New Orleans. So this was like the first time that AD, I mean, it's only the second time he's been traded, and now the third team he's played on, but like AD gets this warm welcome that he deserved. And that, that was a cool moment. And I thought Luka, at first you could tell he gets the technical, and he's a bit over excited or over emotional. And then he hits those back-to-back threes. One of them gets rescinded, but he hits the second one. It's a 29-footer. And then he turns toward the Maverick bench and lets out a roar and is kind of staring them down, as Luka likes to do, which, by the way, he's a diabolical, like, in-game villain. It's just awesome to watch because he just loves trash talking and getting in people's heads and getting under people's skids. And like, it's a little bit different with Dallas because he talked about it afterward. Like, he's gone to war with these guys. He's got relationships with these guys. So I think it was more like playful in jest a little bit. But this dude is like, you see why he's got beef with so many people, because that's just how he's wired. And like, it does make things more exciting to watch and to cover. But so Luka, I think, navigates things, all things considered, like, reasonably well. He does not have the most efficient game from the floor, 6 of 17 shooting, 1 for 7 on threes, but only has 2 turnovers to his 12 assists. Has his first triple-double as a Laker, 4th of the season. And I think he navigated things pretty well. And looking at like the other side of the floor, I thought like Max to me looked offensively a little bit more like the earlier version of Max. He went just 4 for 13, had 10 points. You can tell he's a lot more involved in their offense. At 13 field goal attempts, he took the 3rd most shots on the team. However, I think one thing, one notable point of growth with Max was the 6 assists. And that was something we saw like a little bit from him, not quite to that level, but I think the playmaking was better. And I thought he held up fairly well on some of those switches against some of the, like, a Rui or LeBron or Luka. Like, there were times those guys just bulldozed past him, but he also, I thought, held his own in certain individual possessions. So Max was another guy that you could kind of tell what was going through it emotionally. And he just had the interview with Mark Spears of Anscape and said he didn't sleep the evening of the trade. He was on the floor in his hotel room for a couple hours and didn't sleep that night, had to take an 8:30 flight to Dallas the next day. So just a lot of emotions with this. And I thought the most interesting thing, like, I give Luka a lot of props for just telling it like it is, and not like, I think a lot of people in this scenario would downplay their emotions or downplay just the situation. And Luka has been very transparent about how he's felt. And after the game, as I said, called it a different game, a weird game, said like everything was kind of a blur for him. He doesn't remember a lot. And also said that he knows that, like, this is a step in the right direction, but it's going to take time. He's like, it's going to be a day by day thing for him to get over the shock and the hurt and just all the emotion behind this trade and the situation. So I give him props for that, because I think a lot of athletes would probably, again, like just straight up lie about it or try to downplay it to not look as vulnerable or whatever, whatever adjective you want to use. But Luka's been like very honest about like, this has been a hard situation for him. He got asked if he could even compare this to like a breakup or something, and he was like, no, like this is not comparable to anything in my life. I've never gone through something like this. So all things considered, the Lakers won. Luka got a triple-double. I don't think there's much more to it than that, but it was interesting to see just the scene of the evening. You had Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in attendance. You had Mark Cuban sitting with Chandler Parsons. Of course, you had Nico Harrison behind the Mavericks bench, Rob Pelinka in his normal seats. And it was just like this cast of characters who we've discussed in depth for the past month, and just all the motivations on the Dallas side, all the benefits on the Lakers side. And it was like this sort of awkward reunion that ultimately had to happen. And we're going to go through a second one in early April when the Lakers go out to Dallas. But Luka, I think, like, handled himself as well as could be expected in this situation. And again, triple-double and a win. I think he's going to take that. He said he needed to get some sleep after that press conference. Takeaway number 2 for me is I thought Dorian Finney-Smith was the unsung hero of this game. And maybe that becomes its own category, because I used similar wording with Rui and Vando in the Denver game and their defense specifically against Jokic and how they were able to just create some chaos and be disruptive. But for me, DFS, he has that one closeout in the quarter. In the corner, late in the fourth quarter. He has the Gortat screen. So Luka, the shot clock's going down. Luka's trying to find a way to get into the paint. So as Luka's driving, he just goes and sets the semi-illegal Gortat screen in that instance. And Luka just gets the space he needs to get downhill and get the layup. And then he also has the tip dunk off the LeBron miss. And that was a huge play as well. It was his only basket of the night. So despite Dorian going 1 for 6 and not having the typical plus minus that he normally has, he was a -1, or the Lakers were a -1, in the 28 minutes that he played. I thought he was huge. He had 8 rebounds, which tied Jackson for the third most on the team, behind Luka and LeBron. He had 4 offensive rebounds, which was the most on the team. And as I said, several big plays down the stretch as the game was still hanging in the balance. And I think to zoom out and just look at like the impact that Dorian Finney-Smith has had with this group, it's been remarkable. Like Dorian Finney-Smith, there's been a lot that has changed, and I don't think it's fair to like just say it's because Dorian Finney-Smith was acquired by the Lakers that like all these things happen. But I do think that was a big domino. And we've talked a lot about like LeBron and his defense. We've talked a lot about JJ and his growth as a coach. We've talked a lot about Rui. We've talked about Jackson, obviously the Luka trade and what that means. Even Gabe and Vando, I feel like sometimes get a little bit more shine. But like DFS has just been, again, it doesn't always show up in the box score. And if it does, it's just typically the plus minus. But he just does so many little things. And anytime we ask JJ about it, he just starts rattling off like, this thing didn't show up on the box score. This thing didn't show up on the box score. This thing didn't show up on the box score. But DFS does just all these little winning plays that like he is a winning role player. There's really no way around it. And I think when it gets later in the season and there's a standings battle, and when we get to playoff time, like this is going to be a guy who should be playing. I've already made my case about him as a starter. I acknowledge like Rui's been playing really well. It doesn't seem like that's going to change anytime soon. So even if Dorian is coming off the bench, I think this is a guy who should be easily playing like mid 30s minutes for the Lakers in big games, closing games, arguably at center, depending on how you want to delineate or designate Rui, LeBron, DFS, whatever. Like he's just been awesome, and I think he's really made an impact on both sides of the ball, more so as a connector and a shooter offensively, and then defensively. Like he was guarding Kyrie tonight, and yeah, Kyrie had he shouldn't be guarding Kyrie, right? And Dallas was running actions to get him off of Kyrie, but that just shows you like his bag defensively and just the versatility that he has. He can guard 1 through 5, and outside of Vando and LeBron, I think those are really the only 3 guys on the roster that can do that. And Vando has some offensive limitations that prevent him from playing more. LeBron still has an offensive workload that he has to manage. So like DFS often becomes their primary stopper, and that is an important role on this team as they continue to gel and improve defensively. And then takeaway number 3 for me is I really like that lineup that they closed with. And I think it might end up being the Lakers' best lineup and the lineup that they lean on more progressively throughout the season and also into the playoffs. So again, that was LeBron, Rui, DFS, Austin, and Luka. I think you could make a case like that should be the starting lineup if you wanted to get funky and go small. DFS often subs in for Jackson 3 to 4 minutes into the game anyway, so you do get to that lineup pretty quickly more often than not. But seeing it close against Dallas and just the way that they executed on both sides of the ball and the shots they were able to generate, and like that was when the offense started to look more like the offense that the Lakers had wanted. Then defensively, as I said, held Dallas to 5 points over the final 3:15, and really going back to like the final 5 minutes, I think Dallas ended up scoring fewer than 10 points overall. So I thought that group with, of course, LeBron, Luka, and Austin, you have a certain level of playmaking, but then with Rui as a cutter and a spot up catch and shoot guy, DFS more as like a pick and pop, also catch and shoot guy, and sort of the big man offensively to some extent, or stretch big. Like you just have a lot of optionality offensively, and then defensively, you have 4 guys who are 6'7", 6'8", and above, and like multiple of those guys can defend multiple positions. And I think like right now the Lakers small ball looks to me have like been their best lineups, and that's the one that does lean a little bit more on the offensive end. But Rui's been defending pretty well, and especially when the Lakers are able to slot him on a big and not have him as much on the perimeter. And then DFS, again, is just doing all the little things. So I think that's a lineup that we have seen throughout the course, especially like early first, early third quarters. And we have seen it a little bit in crunch time. Of course, with this being a new situation, like we saw it a little bit in the Denver game. We saw it a bit in the Charlotte game. But I think this is a group that, as they get more reps together, will probably end up being both the Lakers' like heaviest used lineup outside of maybe the starters, but certainly in my opinion the most effective lineup, and it just has a really good two-way balance. So with all that said, let's get into the Q&A here. See, we got some super chats. First one from It's a Clan. Thank you for the super chat. Austin Reeves is an all-star next year. Mark my words. He's been playing like it. I touched a lot on Luka, of course, but it is worth mentioning. Austin had 20 points and 5 assists. He was 5 for 12 from the floor. And I thought at least until LeBron took over offensively in the fourth, Austin was actually their best offensive player, or at least their best offensive scorer / threat, best offensive weapon through the first like three and a half quarters. LeBron had 27 and 12. Had a tough playmaking game, 3 assists to 6 turnovers. That's very, like, even when LeBron has his high turnover games, he tends to, if he has 5, 6, 7 turnovers, he'll have 7, 8, 9 assists. It's rare for him to have more turnovers than assists. So that was a bit off with him, but 11 to 17 shooting, 27 points, really good defense, especially late. Like, you know, LeBron is LeBron. But to your point about Austin, I think it just depends on, there's a lot of factors that go into it, right? Because there's the Lakers I think as long as LeBron is still a Laker, if you told me LeBron is not a Laker next season, I would certainly buy more into this. If LeBron is a Laker and it's LeBron, like we know LeBron's going to get voted in regardless of his performance. So I think he deserved it, but like he's going to be voted in as a starter. And then Luka will probably get the Lakers bump internationally and get like that fan voting. And he's often been a starter anyway, but like if he was a borderline guy or like, depending on who's playing like what, or if his numbers aren't the same for whatever reason, like I think Luka will also get voted in. So LA having two likely starters, in my opinion, next year, assuming everybody remains a Laker, like that, I think that makes it a little tricky for Austin, because at that point you probably have to have a top 3 at worst record to get like multiple all-stars beyond that. So I also think like the competition in the West at the guard spot, it's like you got Devin Booker, De'Aaron Fox, Ja Morant, Steph Curry, Shea, Ant, Luka. So he's taking up one of the spots as a guard. I'm sure there's someone else I'm missing off the top of my head. So like there's just a lot of competition in like, I think Jalen Green has ascended and we'll see how he continues to play moving forward. So there's just a lot of competition there but certainly I think he will be in the conversation. I think he should be in the conversation. I think had he started playing the way he's played since like early December, like late November, early December, if he started that a month and a half earlier, then I think he arguably would have been an all-star, or at least more so in the conversation. He probably would have been like more of a snub, but he's putting up all-star caliber numbers. And so I agree with the premise. I just think in actuality, when we talk through like putting LeBron and Luka on the team and then looking at the West backcourt competition, that's arguably like the toughest position to make an all-star team in the league. If we're being like, I think East front court, West front court, East backcourt, I think you probably have a better chance. Like East backcourt's like the backcourt's pretty tough in both conferences, but I kind of lean more West as just being like the next level. Sean, thank you for the super chat. Luka can have an off shooting night and still make a big impact out there. 15 boards, 12 assists, great playmaking. Beauty of having guys like LeBron, AR, and Rui who can score and back him up. 100% agree with you, and that's the point I tried to make earlier. That even with the off shooting night, he still had 15 rebounds leading the team, 12 assists leading the team. We've seen this where he's been rebounding the ball well and still putting up some playmaking numbers. And as you said, great playmaking. He quarterbacked the offense very well. And I think guys missed a lot of shots and the spacing. And one thing that I think the Lakers really need to work on moving forward is like their offense against teams that switch a lot really gets gummed up for stretches of games. And that's what I feel like you saw tonight to some extent. It was similar to the Charlotte game. Like their offense gets in the mud and they really got to figure out like that's a longer term concern for this group for sure. But to your point, like having LeBron, AR, Rui, those guys can all step up and carry the load. So like this team is loaded offensively because we're talking about those four, but Gabe had a poor shooting performance, and I think in general has kind of been rushing some shots lately and like a little too trigger happy. I think there's a balance with Gabe, and I prefer him more on the aggressive side than not. But I think he can sometimes go a little bit too much in that direction, and I think he needs to rein it in a little bit, especially on that. Like he's kind of a guy you could tell like second, third shot how his night's going, and it feels like he continues to shoot even when it's not going well. But like DFS is a guy who can get you double figures. Gabe is a guy who can get double figures. Jackson is a guy who in the right matchup can be a double figure score. I mean, he had 8 tonight. So yeah, the Lakers have a lot of weapons offensively. Dalton hit a couple shots, which is progress for him based on how much he struggled lately. Was really, really bad defensively, and they targeted him and basically played him off the floor. But he's a guy who we know can heat up and make some shots. So the Lakers have a lot of firepower, and that's a good thing for Luka. That's a good thing for LeBron. That's a good thing for Austin. Mitch Mitchell. So thank you for super chat. He says, thank you, Nico. I forgot to mention that during the Luka part. there was a thank you Nico chant during Luka's first free throws coming out of the timeout. It was actually right after the AD. It was kind of like weird timing because it was right after the AD tribute video, and everyone's like giving AD the standing ovation, and then Luka steps to the free throw line and they start chanting "Thank you, Nico," and I was like, "Damn!" But yeah, the Lakers should be find out when his birthday is and send him a gift basket, send him a fruit basket. Pieter K, not gonna lie, Jovan Reeves is nice with it for real, for real. I try to tell you guys, like I'm not saying I'm right about everything. I've certainly had some takes that have been wrong, and I try to own those takes. But I was like, I felt like I was one of the only people with this type of platform saying like I felt that in a certain context, Austin could be a true number 3, and I think we're seeing it right now. Like when you put other big wing defenders around him and a certain level of defensive talent and a defensive floor. And he also can do a little bit less. I think he's been able to he's taken a little bit of a step back offensively, but has looked just as efficient, just as effective as being, I think, more of, because even the difference with AD versus Luka is like Austin was the third option, but he was often the primary or secondary ball handler. With Luka, it's now he's the third option, but he's also like the secondary to tertiary or like third ball handler, rarely the primary guy. There are some units and whatnot, but yes, like Austin is nice with it, and that's why, like I was saying, do not bench him. He's too good to bench. I think the Lakers got to ride it out, and really, again, I think if there's any change, it should be either Rui out, DFS in, or Jackson out, DFS in. And yeah. Is this Leonel? Leon? Thank you for the super chat. Koloko/Jemison back in rotation or small ball stays? I think it's going to be a nightly matchup dependent rotational decision from JJ. He's alluded to that with those guys and whether he wants to play big or small, it really depends on the matchup. So I think looking at this Dallas group who had Kessler Edwards, who got some random shade. I don't know if you guys saw Nick Stauskas like was taking shots at Kessler Edwards just randomly. And also Dwight Powell, who is on his last legs and is a minimum caliber big man. Like they're just decimated in the front court. They don't have AD, they don't have Lively, they don't have Gafford, and it made more sense to go small and them going with like PJ Washington and Najee Marshall as like their two bigs. It made more sense for LA to downsize. I also think Jackson had a particularly bad game defensively. I know he had a couple of blocks, but I thought they were able to attack him a bit and put him in some difficult situations defensively. So I think it made more sense to go small tonight. But to your point, I think the Koloko Jemison playing time and role and just their spot in the rotation will fluctuate night to night depending on the opponent. And tonight was not really they didn't really need a big tonight necessarily. So I now that said, I think regardless, small ball will stay. I think even the nights when it is Koloko or Jemison, they do go small for stretches. So I think small ball is going to be a big part of the Lakers' identity moving forward. I think it's just a matter of like, is it a 6 to 8 minute thing or is it like a 15 to 20 minute thing? And that's going to depend on. And tonight it was really. It was almost like a 31-minute thing because Jackson played less than 17 minutes. He played 16 minutes and 51 seconds. So like they went 31 minutes without a traditional center. So I think it really depends on the matchup. RGN Cal 4, thank you for the super chat. Jovan, what will Reeves cost after next year? So I talked about this. I will do a couple quick plugs here. I will plug my last mailbag where I talk about Reeves and his potential. I was asked about his contract extension and just his contract situation moving forward. And then I also just posted a vlog from the Portland and Denver trip. Go to the Nike employee store. So check those two out after this, of course. But check those two out if you have not listened or watched them yet, depending on the platform. But as for Reeves, so Reeves is extension eligible as of July 6th, 2025. So all players in his situation, contract-wise, are extension eligible once free agency officially starts, which is July 6th, 2025. Then he is eligible to extend up until the day before the season starts. So we don't know when the season is going to start next year yet. We don't have the official start date, but it's typically like October 21st, 22nd, 23rd, somewhere in that range. So from July 6th through, let's say it's the 22nd, he has until the 21st, from July 6th to the 21st. So about 3.5 months to extend. Now, he's not going to extend because it would not make any sense for Austin Reeves to extend, because the most the Lakers can offer him is around 4 years, 88 million, 90 million, somewhere in that range, which is about 22 and a half million annual value, which is far below Austin's current market value. There were teams considering, and I know this for a fact, like there were a couple of teams considering making him that offer sheet back in 2023 in terms of like the 4-year, $100-ish million offer, which would be 25 million annually at that point. So just think about where Austin was in 2023 and think about where he is in 2025. He is a much better player in 2025 than in 2023. So I think and now I will say with the new CBA, first apron, second apron, I think teams are a bit more conservative with their evaluations of players and how much they're willing to pay for players. So I think that is something that could help the Lakers with this whole situation. But how I think this will play out, as I said in the mailbag, is I think the Lakers will make the extension offer on July 6th. Austin will say, thank you, but no thank you. He will decline that. He will play out next season, 2025-26, opt out of his player option in the summer of 2026, and test free agency, and then likely re-sign with the Lakers on some type of like 4-year, 120 plus million type deal, maybe in the 120 to 130 range. So that would be about 30 to 32 million, depending on what that total ends up being. But I think at this point, he's going to earn himself 30 plus million. And we'll see, like maybe there's a suitor that comes out of nowhere that offers him even more. Maybe someone offers him 35 million. Like I don't know that. I think there's a lot left in the season. There's a lot left in the postseason and in next season. Like he's got like a year and a half to or a little bit less, but to kind of determine his ultimate value in 2026. But I think the trajectory he's on is a guy who's going to be worth 30 plus million. So I would say that as things stand, he's at 30. I mean, if he continues to improve and take this to a different level, like he has gotten better every year. If he gets even better next season, maybe that number is a little bit higher, but he's got to stay healthy and he's got to continue to improve. And I think the Lakers got to win. And you get those three things of him healthy, him improving, and the Lakers winning a championship or making a conference finals or like being a true contender, a true 50 plus win team that goes on a playoff run. That's going to be really good for Austin's value, both with the team and just like them prioritizing keeping him, but also in free agency if he decides to test that option. So that is my read on the Austin situation. Next one from Jan. We finally have a death lineup. LFG. Thank you for the super chat. Yeah, I mean, this is it. And I think the cool thing with it is, as I've talked about, they have the flexibility to like the death lineup. Now, of course, the death lineup was like basically 5 all-stars. Like Andre Iguodala was the worst player in the death lineup, and he was still a pretty good player. Won a finals MVP. It was a former all-star and like what was often like didn't win the 6-man annually. But if you were picking like who is the best bench player in the league, who is the best bench player that you would want for like a playoff series, it was always Andre Iguodala. So like they had 4 all-star at one point, 4 all-stars, like originally Harrison Barnes, Then they get KD. You got 4 All-Stars, 3 or 4 All-NBA guys, and then Andre Iguodala, who's like the best bench player by a mile in the league. So it's not quite at the death lineup, I would say, from like a talent perspective, but of course I get what you're saying and I agree with you. But I think the cool thing with the Lakers is that because they don't, like, I guess the one silver lining, if you want to look for one, in not having 4 All-Stars or 5 or whatever, is they have some flexibility in terms of they can play with the matchups a bit, right? So if you need Vando for a matchup, you can go with Vando over Dorian or over Rui. If Gabe's feeling it, and maybe you need a little bit of a quicker guy, he's hit a few shots and he's I think in a good rhythm. Like, you could close a game with Gabe and go a little bit smaller. So I think these 5 that they close with tonight should be the primary quote unquote death lineup. But I think with Vando and Gabe, you have a couple different looks to change the makeup of that lineup. And those guys are like all kind of similar talent, skill, ability, productivity levels. So it's not like I do, again, expect them to primarily close with those 5. But if they really need Vando's defense and maybe Rui or Dorian's having an off night, or they really need, Gabe's again cooking, like you can go in a couple different directions. So I like having that optionality with having 7 guys that you could theoretically close with, and that's before even mentioning Jackson, who like I think will close in certain matchups, but often I think they'll probably go small. Rich, thank you for the super chat. Are we underestimating the impact the trade had on Luka? I think to an extent, yes. Now, I think Luka is I don't even think, like, I know Luka's a competitor, and he has talked about moving forward. And like, I think he is fully embracing being a Laker, living in Los Angeles. And he had the significant donation to the LA wildfire relief, the charity. And I think he's like going, I thought there was some cathartic moments tonight, and the Jordan brand ad was another kind of step in that direction. But I do think there's an element of Luka like being openly sad about this, and I think, but I think there's almost like an endearing quality to that of like, this guy really cares and he really wanted to be there, and it is, I guess, kind of like a breakup, and as like the new partner, you want to. It's kind of hard to make that comparison, but like, I guess if someone gets a new job and they're a little bit, in this scenario, it's almost like they were fired and then they moved on to somewhere else. It's like they're still kind of processing that, and I still would say like it's so fresh. It's not even been 4 weeks yet, and I know with the way society is and the way the sports cycle is. Everything is so fast paced, and like there's so many games. It's always on to the next one. But I think this is a human thing that this guy's going through. Like, he did not expect to be traded. He thought he was going to be a Maverick for life. He thought he was going to be the next Dirk Nowitzki, and then he gets traded, and he got traded to a great situation. He's in LA. He's with the Lakers. He's playing with LeBron. He's being coached by JJ. He has a chance to win a championship, in my opinion. So I think he's still like processing and understanding that this is probably a blessing and a better situation for him. But the feelings are the feelings, and you can't really rush that. So I think this tonight was a big step in the direction of like him processing and moving forward. But I think the April game will probably be another step within that. And in between then, I think he's going to make a lot of progress with just his fit and where he's at emotionally. But I don't really think, at least in my opinion, it's our place to put a judgment or a timeline or a timetable with like how someone processes something. Now, I'm not saying you're saying that. I know there are some people who have been a little impatient with it, and it's like, I think this dude deserves some time to just kind of sift through his emotions and figure this all out. But I think we saw the Denver game, like. He could, like, this guy is fueled by emotions on one side. So I think the key is him channeling this to like the ESPN story today had the quote that a beast was awakened in him. And if that is really the way that this goes, I think that's going to be a great thing for the Lakers. So I think there's an upside here of like, yes, he's sad, but that sadness could eventually turn into anger. And if channeled and fueled the right way, that's where I think there could be some really productive things from a guy who I think feeds off of being angry. Fang Charlie, yo Jovan, thank you for the super chat. I love the behind the scenes video you put out from a game's point of view. Do you have more insight on the interaction between the team and AD? Also, did you get my email? Please check, man. I did get your email. It's on my to-do list to respond to. I will do your podcast. I just got to find, like, this is a pretty rough time for me. I'm like, it's just been crazy. And then next week we leave on another road trip for like a week and a half. So I will do your pod. I just got to find the right time in my schedule. Insight in terms of the interaction between the team and AD. Well, so post game, or right after the buzzer, like basically the whole bench went over to say what's up to AD and Max. Luka also had a moment with Derek Lively the second. So it is a little weird. Like JJ was asked pregame if he had a conversation with AD before the game, and he said no. And he was almost like the undertone to it was almost like, why would I? Like, we're now on separate. So I think everyone processes it differently again, to kind of go back to the Luka point. And like, I think with JJ, it's like business, move forward. I got a game, like I got a game to coach. I got strategy to go over. I have a game plan. With some of the other guys, I think it's more of like a case by case personal basis. But in terms of guys I saw go over, it was Jackson, Cam, Markieff, Dorian, Austin, and those were the guys I saw from my seat go over. And then again, as I said, Luka and Derek Lively. But I mean, AD was in the group chat with this group. I know he, of course, talked to LeBron. He talked to Austin. He had some one-on-one conversations with guys. So I think they've been in touch. But the night was like, certainly it was an emotionally charged environment. So, but at the end, at the buzzer, people were dapping up and hugging and kind of quickly chatting. So I think that was the basis of the interaction that at least I saw. It's a clan. Again, thank you for the super chat. Austin's defense has significantly improved, in my opinion. I would agree, though. The one thing I will say I've talked about this before. Like, I never thought Austin was like a bad defender. I think that there were some bad games, and sometimes he was picked on, and I think teams started to target him a bit more. But Austin, like, and I mentioned this recently after the game in Portland, but like Austin talked about, he was asked a question that he kind of took offense to, of like, you don't have a defensive reputation, but you defended well tonight. Like, what, how did you feel about contributing on the defensive end? And he was like, my first 2 years, I didn't play. I didn't earn a second out there, if not for defending. Like, I was a defensive hustle role player to get onto the floor. And so like, I think he was like, the implication there was he was kind of saying like, it's funny to him that people think he's this bad defender when he's been a like productive or at least average, if not above average defender for most of his NBA career. I think more recently, especially this season, teams started to target him more. And the Dallas game, what was a big one. There's been some other ones. I also think the increased usage, though, offensively took a toll on his legs, on his energy. I think we have seen through Austin's career, as his offensive role has increased and usage has increased, the defense has taken a bit of a hit. So I think there's a correlation there. And I think more recently, as he's done a little bit less defensively and he hasn't had to be the primary guy as much, and teams haven't been able to target him as much, I think the defense has looked a bit better. I also think the team scheme has been really good in terms of just protecting guys and really like the Lakers are on a string defensively right now. Like everybody is locked in and they are moving in sync. They are a synchronized unit right now. But to your point, like I do think Austin has been defending better, and I think there has been a performance increase. So I think it's a combination of maybe him focusing more on that with knowing that Luka's here and like he needs to step up on that end. But I also think it's been him doing a little bit less offensively, having more energy, and also the team scheme and just the way that the team is defending right now. So I think there's a lot of factors that go into that. Next one from BLC. Thank you for the super chat. Probably the Lakers poison is teams that shoot well from three. I would agree. I think that the Lakers poison, I still have some concern about perimeter players who, like, for as good as the Lakers have been defensively, I still think there's a limitation there with like the best perimeter guys in terms of like bigger perimeter shot creators. So I'm specifically thinking about OKC and Boston. And I know they had a close loss to OKC. I know they beat Boston, but they also beat Boston with AD. I think that the matchup has changed a little bit. And I think they're a harder offense for Boston to guard, but they're also, I think, a little bit of an easier defense for Boston to target. Now with Boston, it often comes down to just like, are they making their shots or not? They're going to jack up 50 plus threes, and they have the nights where they hit you with 20, 25 threes. The other nights they hit you with like 10 or 12, and then they're beatable. But looking at like Tatum and Brown and Shea and J-Dub, I want to see, like, they're going to play Boston soon. They're going to play OKC at the end of the season. I think those are the two best teams in the league. I'm very interested to see how the Lakers match up with those two teams with this particular group, and not based on what the group looked like when they played OKC. I think that was around Thanksgiving, sometime around then. And then Boston was a month ago, and that was with AD and Max. So totally different group. And look, the Lakers have defended well, so maybe they defend both those teams really well. But and Boston is a team that shoots a lot of threes. OKC also shoots a decent amount of threes, but they're not a good shooting team. So I want to see what that looks like against that caliber of opponent. They'll be on the road in both instances, at Boston, at OKC twice. So they'll be in a hostile environment as well. And because I do think tonight kind of showed like the Lakers can still be vulnerable against. You could also probably throw quick guards into this because they don't really have that, like, they don't have the max anymore. It's, I guess, either Gabe, who's a little bit too small for a lot of these guys, or it's Dorian or Vando, who I think like just don't quite have the foot speed for some of the speedsters. But like Kyrie was cooking everybody tonight, and Kyrie's Kyrie, so part of it's just like great offensive player. But even like Spencer Dinwiddie didn't have like a crazy game, but I thought he was able to impact the game, like getting down. Like I just felt like Dallas was too easily able to beat the point of attack defender, get downhill, get the Lakers in rotation, and create catch and shoot opportunities for guys. And a big part of that was Kyrie. But Max, as I said earlier, had 6 assists. PJ Washington had 5 assists. Like they were just able to get the Lakers in a blender and in rotation, and then spray out for threes. So I think how the Lakers, like, really the elite ISO players, I still think the Lakers have some work to do with those types of guys. Evan1512, thank you for the super chat. Your personal opinion on our chances against OKC. Okay, that's a very relevant question to what I just discussed. It's hard for me to say. Like, I think we can play the game on paper. We could play the game on 2K and try to project it. We have not seen this group play OKC yet. So right now it's based on like a 5-game sample size with Luka, a relatively small sample size with OKC having Chet. However, I think the Lakers have some perimeter advantages in terms of, like, they're gonna have to try and use like Lou Dort and Caruso and Shea and J-Dub against Luka and LeBron, like some combination of those guys. And I like the Lakers odds in terms of generating good offense against those guys, despite Lou Dort and Alex Caruso are like pound for pound, two of the best perimeter defenders in the league. It's just, I think they're too small for Luka and LeBron. I know Dort had some success against Luka in the conference semifinals, but like Luka was still the best player in that series, and the Mavericks won. I'm interested to see how the front court looks against Chet and Hartenstein. I think Hartenstein he's a monster on both sides of the ball, and a guy who can I think that they're going to exploit the Lakers a little bit on the offensive glass. I think the double big look could be effective potentially. But I think it's also certainly possible that depending on how Shea's playing, like the Lakers could have the two best players on the floor, at least two of the three between Luka, LeBron, and Shea. So I think the Lakers have a shot. I don't think it's like OKC's going to sweep them or necessarily even win in 5. At the same time, I think OKC is having a dominant regular season, and similar to Boston last year, because they're young, because they're inexperienced, because they haven't done it before, I think people are overlooking them a bit. I think they're in their own tier in the West. I think they should be the favorites to come out of the West, and I would pick them against the Lakers in a 7-game series. However, if we're like putting it in terms of like percentage, I think it's probably closer to 60-40 than anything. And 60-40 is like, you still have a 40% chance to win the series. Like you still have a real shot. So I think that's probably a 6, if not 7-game series. And then we get into like the psychology of, imagine LeBron and Luka in a road game 7. It's tough to bet against those guys. So yeah, I mean, I'm talking myself more into the series, I guess, but I would say, I'd probably say like OKC in 6 would be my tentative pick for right now. But I will say, this is the only team in the West I would pick currently over the Lakers. I would pick the Lakers against anyone else in the conference in a 7-game series. Jazz_Sing, thank you for the super chat. What did you think about Luka's Lakers offense? I thought the Lakers offense, as JJ said post game, was disorganized. I think so. With Luka, it's hard to separate the emotion of the evening and him forcing some things maybe and trying to attack certain guys and just not having it from a jump shot perspective tonight. But I think for in general, the Lakers offense has really struggled against, like, I think that their one Achilles heel right now, aside from the random nights when they have a bunch of turnovers, though I think it's partly related to this, is when teams switch against them and can keep them in front and keep them out of the paint, they can sometimes stagnate offensively, turn into an inefficient, ineffective jump shooting group that is draining the shot clock out. They're having a bunch of grenades, which is like, shots with under 5 seconds left where you just have to throw it up, and they're just not getting the quality of looks that they should be. I do think partly tonight was just like they did get some pretty good looks and they just missed them. But I also think part of it was like the spacing, the timing, the rhythm of the offense, what was not good. And I do attribute it partly to Dallas having so many like-sized defenders and switching a ton. And that's just been something that can gum up the Lakers offense. Now, they figured it out in the fourth quarter, final 5-6 minutes, but it did remind me in some ways of the Charlotte game in that sense, where they let an inferior opponent hang around because more so their offense than their defense, because they held Dallas to under 100 points. Like, this is, if anything, like, this is a good offensive team with their current construction with Kyrie and Clay and PJ Washington, and Max has been playing well offensively, and Dinwiddie, and like they have some firepower. So to hold this group to 99 points and 36% shooting, like, that was a really good defensive performance. It was the offensive end. And I don't even know off the top of my head, Lakers they had 20 fast break points. Okay. 52 points in the paint. So like that stuff was largely in line, maybe a little bit low in the points in the paint, but like, you know, they're pretty much there with their averages. So I think they became a little bit too much of a jump shooting team. And I also think Dallas was able to dictate some of that stuff. Like Vando hit a couple threes, but I don't think that's sustainable. But like the bench also didn't really give them much. So it was not a good offensive performance, I guess, to answer your question. I think it's hard to separate some of the emotions from the Luka side. And then also Lakers got to really figure out their switching offense. That's like, at first it was the zone offense that was struggling, and then they figured that out. I think the next thing is the switching. Harry Chinani, thank you for the super chat. I saw a stat. We are 10-1 when Jackson plays 20 plus minutes. Coincidence? How do we assess if Jackson has a good game as the stats don't jump off? Well, I would even say, like, on paper, Jackson had 8 points, 8 rebounds, and 2 blocks. So like that's about as good as I think, like, and he did that in less than 17 minutes. So that's like a good game on paper for Jackson. I just think there's the defensive side that like isn't going to show up in the box score, which is like closing out to guys, corralling ball handlers, getting beat off the dribble, and just some of the stuff that they were able to pick on him, I think, a little bit and force him into some tough decisions. What I'd be interested in with that is like how many of those games did AD play in? I would assume most of them he did not play in, but like I'm sure a chunk of those, at least a couple, at least a few maybe, AD played in. And I think we saw AD and Jackson together. It was like a pretty good combination. I mean, I think you can tell to some extent, like if Jackson is getting rebounds and blocking shots, like I think that stuff matters for big men. And I think he's actually been doing a much better job in both fronts in terms of being a better rim protector, blocking some shots, being a better defensive rebounder. So I think that's good. I also think, though, there's just like a defensive component where, especially against a smaller opponent, he can be played off the floor a little bit, depending on how he's defending. So I don't think it's a coincidence. I think Jackson's been playing well. I just think he's still a relatively matchup-based player in terms of heavy minutes. And even if I like don't think that, JJ clearly does, right? So there are going to be some matchups where he just feels like it's not a Jackson night. He's going to play under 20 minutes. Soul Good, thank you for the super chat, or Sol Good, excuse me. Thank you for the super chat. Thank you, Nico, for Luka Magic. I will sleep like a baby for the next decade. Again, send him his flowers and his fruit basket. Eeg, thank you for the super chat. Yo, haven't spent much time here lately, so my be if repetitive as a self-proclaimed body language expert. He thinks this team can win it. I don't think he grinds on D pause like he is in the regular season when he thinks otherwise. We're talking about LeBron here? I'm not sure. I'm assuming you're talking about LeBron, but I think the implication you're saying here is that LeBron is trying harder defensively because he believes in this group compared to maybe earlier in the season or in previous seasons. And I wouldn't necessarily disagree. I think LeBron has been very bought in and he has ratcheted it up defensively. JJ said he's been at an all defense level the past 6 weeks. I wouldn't go quite that high, especially when factoring in the all defense teams are only 2 teams and it's like a top 10 defender. But I like the spirit of the comment, and I think LeBron has been pretty good defensively for I would even say beyond 6 weeks, to be honest. But yeah, but yeah, I think I don't think it's the whole thing is just him thinking this group has a chance, but I think that certainly helped and influenced him defensively. Jazz_Sing, thank you for the super chat. Lakers feel like a big 3 with depth, and in today's NBA, that seems impossible. What do you think about AR next contract, and would the Lakers pay up? So I did answer this question earlier, so I would point you back to that. I will quickly say he's going to get the contract extension offer this summer. I think he's going to reject it, opt out 2026, and then get a payday that summer, probably somewhere in the 120 plus range, about $30 million annually per year. I do think the Lakers would be willing to pay that. If Austin keeps developing and playing at a very high level, I wonder if he eventually prices the Lakers out of it, where it gets up to like 35 or even 40 million, depending on how much he continues to ascend. I anticipate it being closer to 30 million because of the first apron, second apron. Teams are going to be more judicious with how they spend their money, but Austin has gotten better every season, and I wouldn't rule out an insane payday. And like, he's also a marketable player, and like, he's a fan favorite. So I think teams could look at that as an attractive thing. So I would point you to the longer answer though earlier in the stream. Eeg, thank you for the super chat again. Rui in this role is really going to punish his matchup. He's the X factor to me, going to get a ton of open looks and playing advantages off the catcher in the paint. Now we trust him on D, unsure. I agree with everything you said here. I think he's been doing like similar to when AD was there. It was Rui got the third best front court defender because they were setting the two best to LeBron and AD, and sometimes even the third one to like Austin or D'Lo. And Rui was getting like guards on him and punishing them. You're seeing some similar stuff happen now. Teams are going to sell out to try and stop the three best players. He's getting the fourth guy. So agree with open looks and playing advantages, catch in the paint, all that stuff. Trust him on D. I think he's been better on defense, and I continue to make the point. I think Rui is more of a 5 than a 3 defensively. And maybe they can get by with the combination of him, Luka, and LeBron as the starting group, and like just kind of figuring it out depending on the night. But I like him more against, like, I think he's defended the Jokic, Cat, Julius Randle types better than the Tatum, Kawhi, Kevin Durant types better. I think that's more in the Dorian Finney-Smith wheelhouse than the Rui one. Now, I think he's been better defensively. I still think there are some processing and decision-making things that I don't know if they're able to be improved upon, but maybe through continued film and reps and stuff. I thought tonight there were some stretches where he got blown by a lot and was not good defensively, but I also think, like, I think he's a 4/4.5 who's being played out of position on some nights, being asked to guard threes. And I just don't really think that's his defensive skill set. But in like a team defensive scheme and also a defensive, like I'll give Rui a lot of credit here. Like, he's really improved as a defensive rebounder. I think he's also been offering some rim protection. Tonight, he had a couple blocks and had 6 rebounds. So I think he's been treading in the right direction defensively. I just think he's not a stopper. In terms of perimeter, like wing guys, that's just not his skill set. So I think the Lakers are kind of playing him out of position in that sense. When it's the Jokic game plan or the Cat game plan or the Julius Randle game plan, and it's like front this guy, battle this guy in the post, I think Rui can do that stuff. But hanging with guys on the perimeter, I just don't think he has the lateral quickness or the hip mobility to do that consistently. Eeg again, I think the sharp team in playoffs are going to sell out on broad drives off of Luka's playmaking. Rui, Reeves, and DFS make open catch and shoot threes. Title possible. Yes, and I think teams are again, to go back to the switching offense, I think teams are going to look at some of the success that teams like Portland and Charlotte and now Dallas have been able to have against the Lakers recently defensively with switching a lot. And Portland, it depended like which bigs were on the floor, but the Lakers got to figure that out. And I think, to your point, like teams are going to pack the paint against them to some extent, and it's going to come down to, can the role players make shots? Now, I think this role player group is in a much better position to make shots than they were in 2024, 2023, or maybe going back to even like 2020. Like they have some good shooters. It's still like not necessarily a strength, but on paper, like DFS and Rui have consistently been 40+% shooters. Austin's been an above average guy. LeBron, Gabe has been 40-ish% for over 2 months now. So like they have some guys that can make threes and be, I think, pretty good catch and shoot spot up guys. So title possible is yes. I think a title is very possible. Honcho, thank you for the super chat. Can you name a better wing depth than the Lakers right now? Luka, LeBron, Rui, DFS, Vando, Connect. I really do believe that we have the best wings right now. To be honest, I'm probably, I mean, you could arguably throw in Austin like as a 2. He's arguably a wing. I would probably take Dalton out of this. I don't think Dalton has been playing well recently, and I don't think he's going to factor into the serious part of the rotation. I just don't think he's shown he could hold up in like big serious games, to be quite honest. But like, I mean, you can throw him in technically, but I would focus more on the Luka, LeBron, Rui, DFS Vando. Off the top of my head, you're probably right. I guess like with Boston, it depends. Like, how do you classify like a Derek White or a Drew Holiday? Are those guards? Are those like guard and wing can kind of blend together? So, but like, I mean, Tatum and Brown gets you in the conversation, but then they don't have like much else. OKC with again, depends how you classify Shea. Because like if we're classifying Luka as a wing here, when he does play technically guard, but he is wing size, like Shea is not as big as Luka, but kind of similar in that like 6'5", 6'6", plays point guard, but can defend wings. Then you got J-Dub, Dort, and Caruso are sort of wings defensively, though they're on the smaller side. But as I try to like go through it, Houston's got some good wings with Jalen Green, Amen Thompson, Jabari Smith when he's healthy, Tari Eason, and I'm sure I'm forgetting. I mean, Cam Whitmore, like that. Houston's up there, but they don't have the top end guys at the Luka LeBron level. Otherwise, off the top of my head, I think you're probably right. I can't, like, the Clippers are also up there. Again, depends how you want to classify Powell and Harden, but like Kawhi, Harden, Powell, Coffee. I think there's more guys. I'm just going off the top of my head here. But yeah, I mean, I would say it's the Lakers. Now, we want to talk bigs, that they're much lower on that list, right? Like there's a trade-off with trading a big for a wing. But yeah, I mean, they're right. They're right there at worst top three, but I think you can make a real case that they're number one. Braden, hey Jovan, thank you for super chat. Hey Jovan, really love the vlogs. Thank you for the content. We love you, brate. Is Naz Reid even a possibility in the offseason? You never want to say never, but the Lakers are not going to be a cap space team. So there is a scenario in which they could maybe open up the non-taxpayer MLE depending on what happens. But even then, Naz Reid's going to make 20 plus million. So they're not going to be a cap space team this summer. Naz Reid is not going to really be an option. Now, could they do a sign and trade? That could be an option. So I guess like that's where I'll leave the door open for that possibility. But in terms of outright signing him, that they don't have a path to do that. That's realistic unless LeBron retires, but then we're having a totally different conversation. The Snow, thank you for the super chat. You ever get nervous watching the threes go up? I'm still getting used to the recent successes around the arc, so used to being burned the past few years. Depends which side of the ball are we talking here, because I'm so used to the Lakers. Like every time I feel like in a close game, someone takes a three against the Lakers, I'm like so used to the Maxi Kleba shot, the Andrew Nemhard shot, the Franz Wagner shot. Like the Lakers have had so many big shots hit against them, especially at crypto, that in close games, I'm kind of like expecting that, like all the Jokic and Murray and Porter shots. In terms of the Lakers, it's certainly an adjustment in terms of like their offensive approach and them just, I mean, I think now this is 4 of the 5 games with Luka. They've taken 40 or more threes. So there's clearly been a shift there offensively in terms of their priorities. And this is more along the lines of the way JJ wants to play. But I mean, I guess you might be talking about the offensive end, in which case, like, yes, it's like there's still a relatively inconsistent shooting team in terms of results, but the process I think is trending in the right way. And yeah, I mean, with Lakers shooters, you just never know. But look, Rui, DFS, Gabe, those guys are kind of breaking the mold of recent Lakers shooters who forget to shoot in a purple and gold jersey. Eeg, thank you for the super chat again. Last one, LBJ player option this summer would be the time to take a discount. Do you have any intel there? Also, AD has to want to bash LAL front office. He's got to feel a type of way. Asks for a 5, gets moved right after LOL. I'm sure AD feels the type of way, but I like, it's not like they didn't even trade him for like I'm trying to think of Like if they traded him for Embiid or Devin Booker, or I mean, even Devin Booker, I think is worse than AD. But like, I think if they traded for him for someone like on his level, wherever you want to put him in the league hierarchy, I could understand it more. But they traded him for a top 5, if not, I argue, top 2 or 3 player in the league who's 25. He's 6 years younger. He's going to be the face of the franchise moving forward. He's currently better. He should age better and be better than AD for the rest of both of their respective careers from this point. Like, I don't really think AD could take it too hard. And he's going to Dallas where they're going to give him most likely the contract that he was looking for. So I think AD is going to be fine. As far as LeBron player option, I don't really have any notable intel there, at least intel that I could share. But what I will say is my assumption, my operating assumption right now would be that if he does take a discount, it would be similar to last season where I think there would be some type of list or some type of caliber of player. I don't think LeBron is just going to take a willy-nilly discount. Like, I don't think it's just like, let's open up the non-taxpayer MLE for like random player X who on paper makes the team like a little bit better, but isn't of a certain caliber. Like if you look at the names outside of Jonas Valanciunas, which I never understood, and I didn't even understand the full list, but it was like James Harden, DeMar DeRozan, Klay Thompson, Jonas Valanciunas. It's like that meme with the clown and the soldiers. Like that was he was basically saying like former All-Stars and Jonas Valanciunas. But Harden was an All-Star this year. Klay is still a solid starter. DeRozan is still a pretty good player. So like that was the caliber of, like, and those guys were never realistic. I mean, if you look at the money that all those guys got, they were never going to. Klay was the one guy that he could have picked the Lakers, but DeRozan and Harden were always out of their price range. Jonas Valanciunas, I still don't really know what happened in terms of like the Lakers could have paid him and he just chose to go to Washington. So I don't think LeBron, like, I guess I will make the prediction that I don't think LeBron just takes a discount. I think it would have to be with a certain player or need in mind, and that, it making sense. Like if Nas Reed is willing to take the non-taxpayer MLE, sure, I think LeBron would consider it. Or if they're going to do a sign and trade kind of similar to what they were planning to do with Klay, maybe LeBron considers that. But otherwise, I don't. Like, this dude's tried to buy a team once he retires. I don't think he's like just looking to give up money, to be honest. Harry Chinani, and I think quickly, I'll just say with LeBron too. Like, I think he deserved, like, he's been underpaid his whole career. So if anyone deserves it, like, I know it gets tricky when we're talking about building a championship roster and like some sacrifices probably need to be made, but at the same time, going back to Kobe, going to LeBron now, like those guys were underpaid technically for the value they brought for so long that it's hard to fault them for potentially not taking a discount. But I digress. Harry Chinani, thank you for the super chat. Vando's still on a minutes restriction. He should play more. To my knowledge, I think the restriction has been pushed up a bit. I think it's in like the at least like the low to mid 20s. I kind of think this is how Vando is going to be used. I think there's an offensive limitation there, despite tonight him hitting 2 threes. And I think the Lakers are just going to really lean into the top 6, which is the starters plus DFS. And then Gabe and Vando are going to be 7 and 8. And like there's going to be a little bit of a gap there between, I would assume like the top 6 more often than not is going to be like 20 plus minutes. And there will be some times like tonight, Gabe played 16, Vando played 14. I think we're going to see some nights like that moving forward. Now, if you eliminate Jordan Goodwin and Dalton Connect, maybe those guys get a little bit more minutes, but I don't like the one thing. I think it's like Vando to me is probably like an 18 to 24 minute a night player. I think it's hard to justify playing him more than that. Like I just think there are some limitations there that he presents to your lineups, especially Jackson Vando lineups, I think should not really play together. So there's a bit of a limitation there, but I in general, I agree that he should play more, especially like Denver game. He plays 6 minutes because of the 5 fouls. But I think one area or one way I've maybe diverged from some people with how they view Vando is like, I've always kind of viewed him more as like a teens to low 20s type player, where I think some people are like, he should start and play like 30 minutes a night. And I don't think he's that type of player necessarily. At least like not like, I don't think it's like a crazy thing. I just think DFS and Rui have both been better than him. I don't like, I feel like it's kind of indisputable. He's been able to impact his role in his limited minutes, but I don't think that necessarily should come at the expense of those two. Mike V, thank you for the super chat. Is it better if we stay in the 4-5 matchup for the first round and face a young team in OKC for the semis, or aim for the 2-3 seed and face Denver in the semis and save OKC for the West final? My take on this in general is control what you can control, win as many games as you can. Don't disrespect the basketball gods and try to play the matchups. There are some cases where it's worked out for teams. There are some cases where it hasn't. And like, go back to last year, there was talk about should the Lakers tank the 7-8 game and try to be the 8 seed and play OKC in round 1 versus playing Denver, because regular season, they get swept by Denver. They go 3-1 against OKC. So it's like, on paper, OKC was a much better matchup for them than Denver last season, but they went for it. They won the game. They played Denver. They lost in 5. So I view it as like, I think the Lakers should try to win every game they can moving forward within reason. Of course, if there's injury situations or like workload situations that they got to manage with Luka or with LeBron or anybody else, I think you got to find the balance there, and you got to prioritize the long-term health of the group. But aside from that exception, I think in general, you try to be the best seed possible. And I would argue that like, you also got to factor in the first round. Like, I think that you don't want to just assume that, like, if you're in the 4-5 matchup, I mean, you can be the 5, which means you don't have home court, but you're playing a team that's pretty good. Like, I think the top 5 teams in the West are probably going to win 50 plus games with the way that this is looking. So you're playing a Memphis, you're playing a Houston, you're playing potentially Denver, depending on how things go the rest of the way. So they're like, I mean, you could flip this on its head and be like, the worst case scenario could be getting the 5 seed and Denver's the 4 seed. Now you have to beat Denver without home court, and then you have to go try to beat OKC without home court if you survive that matchup. So like, I don't think you should play with your food if you're the Lakers or anyone in general. I think you try to get the best seed possible. I think you try to go for the 2 seed. And if you get the 2 seed, now you play the 7 seed, which is worse than the 6 seed or the 5 seed or the 4 seed, depending on, obviously, depending on the being any of the other seeds. And then you have home court in the second round against either the 3 seed or the 6 seed. So if I'm the Lakers, I try to get the 2 seed, and I would order it in 2 seeds best, 3 seeds second best, 4 seed is the third best, and 5 seed is the 4th best. Like that, to me, it's pretty clear. Try to get the best seed possible and let the chips fall where they may. And if you have to face Denver, maybe you face Denver in the second round with home court. Like, I think that's better than hoping Denver and OKC duke it out, or hoping to avoid one of them or whatever. Now, if they are the 4 or 5 seed and they got to play OKC in round 2, then so be it. Like, they got to do that, right? But they're probably gonna have to go through OKC at some point. I believe in going for it and trying to be the best seed possible, get the best record possible, and then figure it out. And if the matchups don't fall your way, the matchups don't fall your way. But I think once you try to, like, it kind of reminds me of this is like a smaller picture thing, but like when the Lakers, especially the last couple seasons, would like roll the ball out late in close games, it feels like they're like tempting fate of, we're just trying to run the clock out here. But then it always felt like immediately the other team would go on a run, because it's just like, just dribble the ball up, just run your offense. And like they would have those bad habits of just stalling too much when they have a lead, like late in a game. And sometimes it would bite them. and they would end up blowing the game, or it ends up going down to like the final possession and the starters have to stay in. And like, it's like, just take care of business, win the games, be the 2 or 3 seed, and see where the matchups go. Next one from Harry Chinani. I'm going to go 5 more minutes until an hour 30. What is Lindsay Harding's role? Could we have a female NBA head coach soon? I don't have great clarity in terms of like, I don't think she's like an offensive or defensive coordinator. I think she's done a lot more player development stuff. And, my understanding, I think it's been the guys at the front of the bench in terms of Nate, Scott Brooks, Nate McMillan, Scott Brooks, Bob Byer, and Greg St. Jean. Like those have been the 4 primary assistants in terms of like offense, defense. With Nate and Scott, there's a lot of head coaching experience they bring. I think with Lindsay, she's been more hands-on with the player development stuff and going over film with guys, going through skill drills and kind of, doing some of those things. But it has been a little like amorphous in terms of some of the roles with JJ's staff. Now, so I hope that kind of answers your question there. I think everybody wears multiple hats. I think there is like Greg St. Jean is largely in charge of the offense, and Nate McMillan is largely in charge of the defense. Everybody else is kind of doing multiple things. And that's sort of the beauty of a coaching staff is like everybody steps up in different ways and everybody steps up at different times in different manners. So I think that hopefully kind of gives you a better idea. And then could we see a female NBA head coach soon? I think so. I think it's trending that way. I don't know when like it is a big step to get there, right? I think like we haven't seen that before. And I think there's a difference between going for like player development assistant, like every rung up the ladder is a little bit harder in terms of taking that next step, but certainly it is possible here. I don't have a timeline for you, but I would not be surprised if like in the next 5 to 10 years, we end up seeing one. All right. Digging into the chat. The Protractor Zero says the team I want to avoid first round is Houston. We won't lose, but they're going to tire LeBron and Luka the blank out. I agree with you. If I'm Lakers, I would not want to face the Thunder or the Nuggets in round 1. I still think those are the 2 other best teams in the West. So I think from that perspective, like as I mentioned on the last mailbag, I talked through some of these scenarios, but I would say Houston versus Memphis. I think Houston is the tougher matchup. And then of course, I think they're tougher than some of the, like Golden State's getting a little interesting because I think historically they've been a good matchup for the Lakers, but throwing in Jimmy, it's like a wild card in the whole situation. So that one is kind of interesting, but Clippers, Timberwolves, and Mavericks, I feel relatively fine about. Dallas is also a wild card depending on that. Like if they get AD, Gafford, and Lively back, that can be a pretty tough team. I still don't know if they quite have the perimeter firepower outside of Kyrie, but Kyrie and AD with some size like that can be pretty tough to stop. So, I mean, I honestly think like every projected playoff team in the West is capable of winning a round, is capable of pushing a series to 6 or 7. I don't think there's going to be a cakewalk unless somehow Phoenix or Sacramento ends up getting the 8 seed, in which case I think those 2 teams will probably get slaughtered by OKC. But outside of that, I think the top 7, it's going to be a bit of a bloodbath, and it's really going to come down to matchups and health and all that stuff and momentum. But in general, I pretty much I agree with your premise that like Houston, the way they play, I forgot, I was talking about them earlier. I forgot to mention Dylan Brooks. Just the athletes, the toughness, the physicality, the way Ime Udoka coaches, like that's going to be a tough team just in terms of like physicality, and they're just gonna be annoying to play. So I agree with you there. Prodigal says no team wants to see Dallas fully healthy. Yeah, I mean Dallas. If that team was fully healthy, they could push for a home court. Nico Harrison's burner says late night gang almost at 200 likes. Yes, let's get those likes up. There's over 1,000 people in here. Please get those likes up before I wrap in a second. Okay, let's see. Adam, I'll wrap here with this one. Oh, there's a couple more. I'll go. Brad Hunt says the fans chanting "Thank you, thank you, Nico" is diabolical. It was, and I can only imagine what it's going to be like in Dallas on, I believe it's April 5th, April 6th, 5th, somewhere in there. Then Adam, thank you for the super chat. Did you see Kendrick Perkins' comments on SportsCenter that Lakers have a big three? Any thoughts? I would agree. I think Austin's been awesome. I think Austin's been playing at an all-star level. I think big three, it's like, it is just one of those things that like you can't really prove it. Like, I guess it depends what your standard is. Is it like three bona fide all-stars? Then I would say technically not, because Austin is yet to be an all-star, but like he's been playing like one. And when you're constantly putting up 18, 20, 22 points, 7, 8 assists every night, like that's a pretty high level. Like I'll say this. I don't know how many third options I would take over Austin in the league right now. And I don't know how many third options I would take offensively, specifically over Austin in the league right now. It's a very short list. It might not be more than 5 players. So I guess by that standard, it's looking like a big three. And yeah, I mean, that's why I currently have the Lakers 4th in the league and behind Boston, OKC, and Cleveland in that order. And I think the Lakers have a real shot to win a championship. But on that note, I will end things now. I will be back tomorrow with a second mailbag. So I have 10 to 12 more questions to get through, and I'll touch on some of this stuff in more depth in the mailbag. But thank you all so much for watching and listening. Those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. For those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. Again, I'll be back tomorrow. And for those who have not checked it out yet, I just had a mailbag go up late Monday night. Most of it's still applicable to now. I tried to keep it evergreen questions, and then also had a vlog go up Tuesday early afternoon about the Portland and Denver road games and what it was like to be on the road for that. Also going to the Nike company store and what that was like and what I got there. So check out both of those if you have not checked them out yet. Shout out to the late night gang. I appreciate you all for staying up so late. This was a fun night, an important night in the Lakers season, in Luka's season, and Paul says, you still be writing? Yes, I still be writing. So also check me out on The Athletic for those who are subscribed or for those who are not subscribed. But I appreciate you all, and I'll talk to you all very soon.